Zombie Reddit, today's story is...
My husband left me by text after our anniversary, saying I was his second choice. His despair 3 weeks later when he was completely alone was instant karma. The trip for our first anniversary had been my dream for a long time. A beachfront resort, candlelit dinners, and special moments as a couple. For me, it was the perfect way to celebrate our first year as husband and wife. I had taken great pains to plan every detail, even making sure I had his favorite wine for the toast, trying to create an unforgettable experience. He seemed happy, or at least that's what I wanted to believe. Now, looking back, the signs were there, albeit subtle. During the trip, his behavior had changed. He constantly checked his phone, avoided holding my hand while we walked on the beach, and spent long moments gazing at the ocean in silence instead of talking to me. He always told me that I analyzed things too much, so I convinced myself that the tension I felt was just a figment of my imagination. Our last day turned out to be less special than I had anticipated. I was expecting a romantic dinner to end the trip, but he suggested we stay in the room and order room service. He barely tasted his food and stared at me, as if he wanted to tell me something important but couldn't find the right words. Naively, I thought that maybe he was planning a final surprise, perhaps a special gift, or some meaningful gesture to conclude our celebration. When we arrived at the airport, he suddenly mentioned that he was going to buy a coffee. I sat at the departure gate, distracted by my phone, already thinking about our return to the daily routine. My phone vibrated with a message from him. For a moment, I smiled, thinking it was a loving gesture from a distance. But what I read was far from tender, and the idea of returning to our normal life became a distant dream compared to what the message said. He wrote that he could no longer pretend to be happy when he wasn't, that he regretted marrying me because I wasn't his first choice, but that he had accepted to settle for his alternative. He apologized, but insisted that it wasn't fair to either of them to continue living a lie. He wouldn't be coming back with me on the flight. He asked me to go home alone, and that we would talk when he was ready. I looked around, hoping he would appear and laugh, thinking it might be a bad joke. But he wasn't anywhere to be seen. He had left. I reread the message several times, wishing I had misinterpreted the words, but it was all clear. I tried calling him repeatedly, but all the calls went straight to voicemail. He had either turned off his phone or was out of range. He had simply abandoned me in an airport without having the decency to face me personally. And the worst thing was that he did it after an anniversary trip, when he could have told me all this at home in peace. I struggled to hold back the tears in such a public place. Shame mixed with my pain, and I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing me cry for him. When the passengers started boarding, I collected my belongings and looked for my seat. Although I tried to present myself as a strong person, I must admit that when the plane took off, a few silent tears rolled down my cheeks as I looked out the window, trying not to let anyone notice. I am not proud of this vulnerability, but when you travel to celebrate love and return completely alone, the feeling of helplessness is overwhelming. Halfway through the flight, I did something I had decided not to do. I wrote to him. After he ignored my calls, I thought I didn't need to communicate with him, but I needed answers. If I had known before, I wouldn't have bought tickets on a plane with internet service. I simply asked him, why? Why are you doing this? His reply came shortly after. He said he was tired of pretending to be someone he wasn't, that he had tried to make our relationship work, but he couldn't force non-existent feelings. He confessed that he had married me because I was secure, reliable, and easy to please, but I wasn't the woman he really wanted. He admitted that he thought he might grow to love me, but he had been wrong. I felt completely humiliated and discarded, the exact feeling you get when you discover that you have only ever been someone's second choice. I didn't marry him for security, I did it because I loved him, which I consider the only valid reason for doing so. Safe and reliable was all it meant to him. I replied angrily, asking him who this first choice was, as I suspected he might have been unfaithful to me. I got no answer. By the time we landed, I felt emotionally numb. I didn't even try to call him again. I knew there was no point. He had already made his decision, so I saw no reason to try to convince him of anything. I arrived at our house, which now felt terribly alien. Every corner reminded me of how much I had been pretending all this time, while I sincerely believed that we loved each other. He had left his shoes by the entrance before we left, so I took out my frustration by kicking them hard. Then I collapsed on the sofa, staring into space, allowing all of reality to sink in. I had no energy or motivation to do anything else. I don't remember getting much sleep that night. I spent hours on the sofa and woke up early this morning, at which point I am writing this. I guess putting my thoughts in writing helps me process them a little better. Update 1. I sincerely thank those who expressed concern for me. I admit that I was in a very dark place when I wrote my initial post, but I am not as bad as I may have made out to be. I am obviously sad and affected, but I am not contemplating extreme actions or anything like that. I am simply a wife going through a grieving process. I stayed at home for several days, although I have now left. At no time did my husband show up, call me, or reply to my last message. During those days, I hardly ate or slept. My body functioned automatically as I mentally reviewed everything that had happened. I reflected not only on the trip but also on our previous relationship. On the third day, the initial fog of pain began to dissipate, replaced by intense anger. He had abandoned me to deal with this disaster alone while he disappeared. He behaved as if he were the victim of the whole situation, the poor man trapped in a loveless marriage. I decided that I was not going to stay and suffer in a house full of memories that had now become painful. I drew up a detailed plan that took me a week to complete. I packed my belongings, carefully separating what was exclusively mine from what we had acquired together. I didn't want to keep anything related to him. I left his possessions intact, let him take care of his own things. I also took care of terminating the lease. The house was rented. We had decided to move from our small apartment to a larger place further away from the city center to start our new life together. I felt it was the right thing to do to terminate the contract, as I did not plan to stay there and I did not want to be responsible for the payments if my husband did not return. The contract was in my name only because of certain problems he had that prevented him from appearing as the tenant. I contacted the landlord, who was understanding, especially as we were close to the renewal date, and I scheduled the eviction notice to coincide with my departure. Then I sat down to write a detailed letter. I needed to express my perspective. Even if he never read it, I needed to get all these feelings out of my system. I began by explaining that I was leaving, not only the house but also the marriage. I included some personal observations and mentioned things I had done for him during our time together, details that are not relevant to share here. I told him how humiliating it was to be discarded at an airport simply for being his plan B. I reminded him that while he was chasing a dream, I had been building a future for both of us, a future that he did not deserve. Finally, I made it clear to him that if he thought I was ending things on his terms, I had already taken the first step forward. Along with the letter, I included official documents, one to initiate our divorce and another notifying him that he had to leave the house. The lease ended in a week, and he would have to find a new place and move out on his own. I no longer cared where he would go. It was no longer my problem. On my last day in the house, I placed the letter on the kitchen worktop, under her favorite cup. That way, when I returned and she wanted to make herself a coffee, she would see it immediately. Then I left for good. I have secured a small, temporary apartment, which was my only available option at the time. At least until I find something more permanent. Staying in our old house was not an alternative. It had become a form of emotional torture. Update 2. Some have asked how I managed to find somewhere to live so quickly. To clarify, it is not an apartment for me to settle into long-term, it is completely temporary. I knew the owner previously. She has a bakery and kindly allowed me to move at such short notice into the small apartment she has on the top floor, a basic but sufficient space. And, by the way, I am not completely alone during this process. During this period, I had to take time off work, even after returning from our supposed vacation. Fortunately, my work has been understanding of the situation. My friends have tried to support me, but I have isolated myself quite a bit. I don't have much close family either, so this temporary accommodation option has been the best solution available. However, I have had the unconditional support of my best friend Kelly. She turned up as soon as I told her where I had moved, bringing enough supplies in her car to last a whole month. Enough to survive an apocalypse in an underground bunker. That's how wonderful a friend she is. She even brought bread, even though I didn't need it, living above a bakery, a detail I forgot to mention to her. She is my best friend because she knows exactly when I should not be pressured to talk, and that is exactly what she did. She came, sat with me, we ate some of the cookies she brought, and we talked about completely different topics. Among the provisions, she had also included alcohol, an equally necessary element after a nuclear disaster or a breakup like this one. So we consoled ourselves a little with that day. The pain is still there, but the biscuits and wine certainly helped to cope with it. Update 3. Exactly 2 weeks have passed since I left the house, and I finally received the call I was anticipating. It wasn't a question of whether he would call me, but when he would. I knew he still had access to the house, as the owner informed me that his belongings were still there. When I answered, he told me that he had returned, found the letter, and all the documents I had left for him. He began by apologizing profusely. But he wasn't apologizing for abandoning me or for the inconsiderate way he did it. He was apologizing because he regretted leaving me. He explained that he had spent several days reflecting and realized that it had all been a terrible mistake. He said that he missed me, and that when he returned he hoped to find me there so he could apologize to me in person. He also asked me what had happened to his shoes. I had no answers to give him. Among the things he admitted to, he mentioned that he had been selfish and that he didn't understand what had happened to him that day, insisting that he didn't really mean everything he said. He tried to justify himself by saying that maybe he was melancholic or depressed, and that's why he made that impulsive decision. It might have been halfway believable if he hadn't explicitly confessed to me that I was his second choice. It wouldn't be forgivable, but at least it would be believable. Regardless of how he felt that day, there was no reason to tell me that I was his second choice, unless it was true, and that truth couldn't be erased with apologies, late regrets, or anything else. He suggested that he was willing to compensate me with another trip, completely paid for by him. His voice broke when he said my name, begging me to give him a second chance. I don't know where this man was when I found myself abandoned in an airport. At that moment, he didn't ask me to talk or show any interest in finding out about me. Why should I want to reconcile now? Don't mistake my attitude for a desire for revenge, but I could never forgive myself if I went back to him. You don't treat your partner, whether man or woman, the way he treated me, and then just ask for forgiveness and hope that everything will magically work out. Especially when he is no longer even an option for me. My options, although I don't currently have any, would be those that choose me first. That's what you do when you marry someone, and that's what I did with him. Choose him first. I interrupted him as he continued to go around in circles, apologizing and repeating that he had made a mistake. I informed him that I had already started the divorce proceedings, and, as I could see, he was taking it very seriously. He had the unfortunate idea of telling me that I should have contacted him before ending our marriage. But the one who really ended it, although not officially, was him. And I did try to contact him to ask him who his first choice was, but he never replied. What did he expect? That I would give him 6 months to see if he regretted it. Unfortunately for him, our marriage did not include a free trial period. And no, I'm not just mentioning this here, I said it to him directly. He continued to plead. He promised that things would be different this time, that he would seek professional help and do whatever it took to make me happy. He claimed that he hadn't realized how much I meant to him until he spent time without me, until he read the letter and the legal documents. I asked him if he understood how I felt when he abandoned me at the airport. I stressed that he could have told me all this face to face. I reminded him that the whole airport scene was completely unnecessary. Among other things, I made it clear to him that our relationship was definitely over. I also told him that although I should wish him well, I honestly didn't, and that I wasn't interested in resuming our relationship. I deserve much better than a man who ends a marriage by text message in an airport after an anniversary vacation. Listing these circumstances makes me question whether he really expected me to give him another chance. Almost in a whisper, evidently defeated, he asked if we could meet in person to talk. He insisted that he needed to see me, to explain himself properly, to show me how much he regretted his actions. Part of me wanted to see the pain in his face and feel the satisfaction of knowing that he finally understood what he had lost. But I understood that meeting with him would only drag me back into the emotional chaos I was trying to escape. I told him I would think about it, although we both knew that my answer was already no. However, I agreed to see him only for pending legal matters. Update 4. This update comes 2 months after I left the house, just to put it in context. Kelly has been my main support throughout this process, turning up unexpectedly with coffee or inviting me on impromptu outings. One night, while we were sharing a plate of nachos at our favorite restaurant, she commented that I seemed different, perhaps a little more cheerful than before. Well, if she perceives any improvement, maybe it's true. It's hard to notice when you're in the middle of the situation. I received a message from my ex. My lawyer has helped me manage communication with him, and there really wasn't much to divide between us. If I had known I would face so much drama, I would have married someone wealthy. At least then I would have gotten some benefit out of all this suffering. Before anyone misunderstands my words, like that comment suggesting I should give him another chance, I'm just joking. I'm not interested in the financial aspect, but there really is nothing positive to salvage from this marriage. The message said he had agreed to the divorce and was signing the relevant documents. She thanked me for the years we had shared before and during our marriage, and acknowledged that it had been a mistake to take me for granted. She expressed her hope that I would find the happiness I deserved. I replied with a brief message, thanking her for her sincerity and wishing her the best. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was my way of freeing myself from the situation. However, one day, while checking my social networks, I came across a post that explained a lot of things. He had tagged her in a photo taken in a bar, with a revealing caption. I don't have my ex added to my contacts, but we share mutual friends, so occasionally his posts appear in my feed. I couldn't help but laugh when I saw it. It wasn't a bitter laugh, but one of genuine amusement. After all the drama, after all his tears, and apparently sincere apologies, he had gone back to her. The irony was almost poetic. This was his pattern, his way of filling the gaps in his life with people he didn't know how to value properly. I even felt compassion for his supposed first choice. Even so, I didn't spend more than a few minutes on this revelation and went on with my life. It's comforting to finally have some answers. Update 5. Not even 2 days had passed since I saw that photograph when my phone rang again. What else could he want to tell me? I thought, ready to put an end to this situation once and for all. He mentioned that he wanted to talk about the divorce and that he was not ready to give up on our relationship. I asked him what had changed since his last message, the one in which he so kindly accepted our divorce. He replied that he had made a serious mistake in letting me go. I interrupted him, pointing out that his words did not seem sincere. I explained that I had already seen the photograph with his ex. He insisted that the picture with his ex didn't mean anything, that it had just been a chance encounter with an old friend, and that people were drawing the wrong conclusions. He assured me that he still loved me and couldn't imagine his future without me. I let him continue with his explanations, as it was surprising how easily he lied. My response was direct. People could have misinterpreted. I really didn't care what others thought, but my conclusion was that his ex was playing with his feelings by considering getting back with him, and when that happened, he just didn't want to be alone. He insisted that the photograph was out of context, and that I, like other people, was jumping to conclusions. I replied that if that was the case, then I didn't think that the others were wrong, as they thought exactly the same as me. He claimed that he didn't love her, that he had only got back in touch with her because he was feeling lonely. So I asked him directly, "Isn't she the woman you mentioned as your first choice?" At that moment, he started to cry again. It's surprising how much he cries now, when he didn't show this tendency before. He stammered something like, I had always been his first choice, that he had only had a moment of doubt, but that during this time apart, he had realized that I was really his priority. I asked him, "Did you come to that conclusion by yourself, or did someone make you realize it?" His answer was defensive. "Can't I think for myself? I don't need anyone to make me reflect. Are you sure that your ex didn't reject you, and now I'm your first choice simply because the previous one has disappeared from the list?" I insisted. "No, that's not what happened. If I say you're my first choice, it's because I really believe it," he replied with apparent indignation. Because that's exactly what it sounds like. And if I had the chance, I'd bet all my money that's exactly what happened. My ex-husband then flew into a rage. I think the one with the first choice is you, and you're looking for excuses not to admit it. If you were my second choice, I would have invited you to an airport to tell you. By text message, of course, I replied ironically. It's not funny, he said my name seriously. I'm opening my heart to you and choosing you, while you make no effort to rebuild our relationship. Wow, I'm flattered that you chose me as your second choice because you didn't get the first one, but I'm going to decline your offer. I suggest you look for your third choice. Maybe I have low enough self-esteem to stay with you, I concluded. After that, he abruptly ended the call. He deprived me of the satisfaction of being the one to hang up, but I think being able to express these responses made up for that small detail. I should clarify that I have slightly paraphrased our conversation, as I don't remember his exact words. However, the general meaning is accurate, although between his crying and his anger, some phrases were difficult to fully understand. The only thing that was perfectly clear is the truth of the situation, even if my future ex is not willing to recognize it. Update 6. I have not received any more emotional calls from my almost ex-husband. Our divorce is about to be official. However, I did receive a private message from the person who appeared with my husband in that photograph. I did not open the message immediately. I did not know what to expect from this communication, and I did not feel emotionally prepared, but I should have done so earlier, because it turned out not to be as negative as I feared. That same night, after debating with myself internally, I finally opened the message and read it quickly. She began by introducing herself formally, as if I didn't know who she was. Then she continued in a surprisingly familiar tone, mentioning that she hoped I didn't consider her message inappropriate, but she felt it was necessary to clarify the situation. She explained that she knew about our divorce and wanted to make sure that I understood that she was not responsible for it. She said that she and my ex had only resumed contact after he informed her that we were separating. She emphasized that they were currently just friends, and that she had no relation to any feelings that my husband might have. She assured me that she had no bad intentions. She even suggested that if I ever needed to talk, she would be willing to clear up any misunderstandings. At this point, there really isn't much to clarify. Her message and my ex's actions have made everything quite clear, even without the need for this additional communication. I don't believe she was the direct cause of the breakdown of my marriage. He was. I replied cordially that it was fine and that she didn't need any further explanation. I can't be sure, but I get the impression that she wasn't the villain in this story. I can't see why she would write to me now, unless she felt guilty for having indirectly contributed to the breakup of a marriage. In other words, if she had really had a relationship with my husband, she probably wouldn't be contacting me now, and my husband would be with her instead of calling me in tears asking for another chance. If I were involved in a similar situation, I would surely also try to clear my name. But even if I am wrong in my interpretation, and I do not rule out that possibility, it really doesn't matter at this point. I am in the process of divorce. She is free to have a relationship with my ex if she wishes, especially if she already did so during our marriage. The next day, I casually mentioned this message to Kelly, who insisted on seeing it personally. She shares my opinion on this matter. She is currently helping me move to a more permanent place, one that is not constantly permeated with the aroma of freshly baked bread. Not that I dislike that smell, but it does not contribute to maintaining a healthy diet when all you can think about is enjoying those products.